Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, May 3rd, 2007. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. Well, this week we talked to Gary Glass, director of the American Homebrewers Association, about 3 events coming up in the world of AHA. The 10th annual Big Brew, coming up this Saturday, the National Homebrew Competition, and the National Homebrewers Conference, coming up in June. If you're new to homebrewing, or if you'd like to get into the hobby for the first time, be sure to check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through the basic and more advanced brewing techniques. Also, if you go to the shop on basicbrewing.com, you can see our new T-shirt, just in time for the warmer weather, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, which has the catchphrase, soon to sweep the nation. Are you ready? Go forth and flocculate. That's right. Move over, where's the beef, and what you're talking about, Willis. I predict that go forth and flocculate will be the next big thing that people will be talking about for decades. So look under apparel in our shop on basicbrewing.com and check it out. The first one to have one in the country, in the world, besides me, Rick Sellers of Pacific Brew News Radio, obviously a trendsetter. So thanks, Rick. And hopefully they'll be spreading the word up there in the northwest part of the country. Special thanks to Matt in Elkridge, Maryland, who sent in a picture of himself snooba-ing in a Basic Brewing T-shirt off the Virgin Islands. So if you're curious as to what snooba is, it's kind of like scuba, only you don't wear the tanks. The tanks are floating on the surface, and you're just tethered. Breathing off of that, it just looks really cool. Anyway, Matt has given me further incentive to actually build the online showcase of shirt wearers that I've been talking about for 2 years now, and I hope to have that done by the end of the week. So cross your fingers, knock wood, and all that. And thanks again to Matt for that really cool picture of him underwater. Top that, guys. Mark from Waukesha, Wisconsin writes, I humbly request that you air the Dan Carey interview you mentioned on last week's show. New Glarus Brewing Company is without a doubt my favorite brewery, and I've always wanted to know Carey's methods of oak brewing. They produce my favorite beer, the Belgium Red, which is a Flemish sour ale with Door County cherries. And yes, that is a wonderful beer, and I love the other beers of New Glarus's that I've tried. And next week, the interview with Dan Carey. I wanted to get Gary on this week to talk about the Big Brew before it was history, to give you guys a chance to be a part of that. So next week, Dan Carey, and it will be well worth the wait. So thanks, Mark. Still getting feedback from the Iodophore episode. Trevor from Reading, Pennsylvania says, in a recent interview on Iodophore, it was stated that it was good in an open container for only 8 hours. I keep a bottle washer full of an iodophore solution on top of my bottle tree for final washing for at least a week. Trevor says, are you telling me this is no good? I've never had a problem. I soak my bottles overnight on a bucket of bleach. Then, overnight, in a bucket of One Step. Then, since in iodophore. Well, I, of course, passed the buck to Merle Landman of National Chemicals on this one, and Merle's been good to help us with these questions as they've come in. And here's what Merle says about this one. He says, the lifespan of diluted iodophore is based on environmental conditions, including heat, UV exposure, water hardness, pH, and bioload. Kind of reminds me when the boys were in diapers, the bioload. In the most ideal situations, Merle says, using neutral, sterile, distilled water as a diluent in a cool, unexposed area, the iodophore solution will have the same lifespan as the concentrate. However, these conditions are rarely, if ever, met. We base our guidance and directions on below-average water conditions and above-average bioload. In short, you may still be maintaining efficacy in the unused diluted iodophore in your bottle washer if you have above-average water conditions and below-average bioload. The best way to be certain is to use a testing strip to measure the concentration of your iodophore solution. And Merle continues, I reviewed your bottle cleaning regimen, and it appears that you have doubled up on the detergency step while eliminating the rinsing step. If you remember, Trevor does overnight in bleach and then overnight in one step and then iodophore. Merle says the proper procedure for preparing food contact surfaces is wash, clear water rinse, then sanitize. The bleach and one step are both acting to loosen and dissolve the soil. The bleach uses chlorine for detergency, where the one step uses some form of caustic. Merle says, I do have concerns about using the bleach and one step in the same process because any residual chlorine will immediately produce toxic chlorine gas when you introduce the caustic, much like adding ammonia to bleach. I would suggest that you use the one step to clean the bottles, rinse with clear water, then sanitize with the iodophore. Rinsing is especially important when using a caustic detergent because the high pH will interfere with the iodophore. So there you go. I appreciate Merle's continued help with these issues. And along those lines, Max from Memphis writes, I don't know whether it's been mentioned before, but OxyClean is a great product for use for cleaning, not sanitizing bottles. Not only is it easy to soak in and gets rid of any growths that may have occurred from not rinsing, but it also removes paper and foil labels with ease by dissolving the glue. And Max says it doesn't take off plastic labels, though. So there you go. Darren from Tempe, Arizona writes, maybe you can help me out. I've been brewing for a while, and I'm to the point where I want to start making my own recipes. The problem I'm having is that there are just too many versions of the same ingredients to pick from. I want to use a light crystal in a recipe. Okay. Then there is Caramel 10 from Brees, Carahel from Wireman, Caramel 10 from Cargill, and the list goes on. Is there any noticeable difference between brands, or is this just a Coke or Pepsi thing for maltsters? It's a good question. Well, Darren, just like Coke and Pepsi, you can come up with your own taste test to see if there's any difference yourself. Maybe that may be the way to go. I suggest making a tea with these grains and seeing if you notice any difference side by side. You know, crush them, put them in some hot water, below 170, I guess, and taste them, smell them, see what you think. Look at the color. Use equal amounts of each. I'd also talk to your local homebrew store owner and other experienced brewers in your area to see what their perceptions and preferences are. So that would be a fun experiment to do. Bill from Illinois dropped a note to tell us about his trip to Three Floyds Brewing for the release of Dark Lord Russian Imperial Stout. And I forwarded the note to Jeffrey T. of the Good Beer Show and to Jeff and Greg of Craft Beer Radio, because that's kind of up in their neck of the woods, and they talk about that beer every now and then. But what perked up my ears was this. Bill writes, this is a festival. They had a good-sized tent set up with many tables where anyone that brought along some homebrew could share / trade / sample. They had other tables that were full of various beers brought by the attendees that were their favorites. Folks were enjoying and sampling both commercial as well as homebrews. There was also some trading as well. So that's a cool idea. That would be fun. What if there were a big get-together where homebrewers could bring, like a couple cases of homebrew and just swap around with other folks that are there? You'd probably get a few dogs in there, but but I'm sure that you also get some wonderful stuff too that would be inspirational. I mean, there's a lot of swapping of homebrews and tasting of different homebrews at the National Homebrewers Conference every year, but it would be kind of cool to bring a couple cases of bottles and swap those out as well. Kevin from Winchester, Kentucky, is running through the archives and heard Brian Warren's interview with Dr. Garth Cambray from South Africa and his continuous mead fermentation system. Kevin says, I just got an iPod and have been catching up on the really old episodes and thought I'd comment on the continuous fermentation mead system discussed in a mead episode. I'm a fermentation engineer and home brewer, and I've worked with continuous fermenters called a chemostat in the past. You received some letters where people expressed interest in testing out this process, but Kevin says, I would recommend against it for a couple of reasons. First, Kevin says, unless you are completely sterile, meaning your process, I guess not you, bacteria will eventually outcompete the yeast and take over the fermenter. Second, like the interviewee mentioned, you will see some strain evolution over time. Evolution happens due to selective pressure. In beer, we would want to maintain good flavor, but in a chemostat, the selective pressure is survival. This means that whatever allows the yeast to survive will be what wins. This could mean that you unintentionally select for higher and faster ethanol production, greater organic acid production, lower pH, or any other metabolic process which gives the yeast a competitive edge instead of producing a tasty beverage. Good points, Kevin. It would be interesting to get Dr. Garth's reaction on that and see how he keeps yeast evolving in a positive direction to get good mead. And I have tried to arrange an interview with Dr. Garth, but it's tough. He's on the other side of the world. I mean, almost literally. Kevin also weighs in on the brewing software issue. He says, I just listened to the brewing software episode and thought I'd throw in a few comments. I'm one of the developers of a software package called Cyberbrau, Cyberbrau. It's a web-based tool, free, and open source. I have a copy installed on my Homebrew Club's website for the club to use. Here are some of the features. Each user has their own account and can manage their own recipe list. Users can keep a brewing log and note any deviations from the original recipe. Each batch can have tasting notes associated with them, similar to BJCP style ratings. Recipes can be easily scaled up and down. A homebrew friend of mine is diabetic, so I added in a calculation for the grams of carbs in a finished beer. It's useful. Calculates calories per 12-ounce serving, SRM, IBU, and gravities. The downsize, Kevin says, requires a web server and MySQL database. Upsides, web-based, can access it anywhere. When used in a club setting, you can see recipes for beer you've actually tried versus finding a random recipe on the web, and it has an intuitive interface. Gary from Bellingham, Washington says, I've used Beer Tools, ProMash, Beer Alchemy, Q-Brew, and Homebrew Formulator. By far the best one is Beer Alchemy. I just listened to you talk about recipe portability. With Beer Alchemy, the program will export all your recipes to your iPod. When I go to my local homebrew shop, I just bring my iPod, scroll to the recipe section, and all the stuff I need to know is there. Plus, the brew days allowed for logging. Awesome Mac software. Great looking and versatile. Also, with the inventory feature, you can click on Suggest a Beer and see what you can brew with what you have left on hand. That's cool. Finally, it can import the beer, XML, and other recipe files created by the other popular software options. So thanks, Gary, for that. David from Los Alamos, New Mexico writes, I'm a long-time 25-year homebrewer. I have been and am a great fan of designing great beers. That's the book by Ray Daniels. I have designed quite a few styles following Daniels' methods. However, I have switched mainly to using BrewSmith. The batch sparge feature works fine, David says, except Los Alamos is at 7,500 feet elevation and water boils at 197 degrees Fahrenheit, which screws up some of the batch volume additions. The water is too cold. That's a good point. David says, my experience in hand calculating taught me quite a bit designing beers. BrewSmith and probably others just makes the calculations less tedious. That's a good point. Chris from, I believe he's in Pennsylvania, writes, I downloaded Jason's file from the site. Wow, what a nice spreadsheet. I wanted to add for people who do not have Office, NeoOffice is really a great free alternative. Chris says using this program and Jason's spreadsheet offers another great free way to formulate your recipes. Plus, NeoOffice is universal binary, So it works great on my G5 PowerPC and my MacBook Pro Intel. Well, there you go. The Mac users speaking up this week. That's good. I use both platforms, so I try not to try not to slam either one. I'll put a link to NeoOffice along with CyberBrow in the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com. Thanks everybody for all the input. This program wouldn't be half of what it is without everybody writing in, so I appreciate it. You can get in touch at james@basicbrewing.com or just use the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. One more note, our video tour of Great Divide Brewing in Denver is now up on basicbrewingvideo.com, and this is the first episode that's in a higher resolution to work better on Apple TV and those big fancy TVs. I don't have a big fancy TV yet myself, but I'm curious to see what you guys who have them think. So if you've got one, let me know what it looks like. Should look better. It's like twice as wide, twice as tall, twice as big. Bigger me. It's kind of scary. Now, on to our interview with Gary Glass, director of the American Homebrewers Association, to let us in on what's coming up for the AHA. Well, Gary Glass, welcome again to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks, James. Good to be on.
It's been a while since we've talked, and I thought that I would have you on, and we can kind of catch up on some things that are coming up, some exciting, fun stuff.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
The first thing is what's coming up this weekend, and that is the 10th annual Big Brew.
That's correct. It's our celebration of National Homebrew Day. We put together some recipes for people to brew, and it's gained in quite some popularity over the last 10 years. We now have people from several countries around the world that participate in Big Brew every year. And
I'm looking at the statistics from last year. In 2006, more than 7,000 gallons were brewed by more than 2,500 participants at 229 sites worldwide.
That's correct.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty good. It's really something that brings homebrewers together. I mean, I think homebrewers, regardless of the language they speak, regardless of where they live or the ingredients they can get a hold of, have a common bond. And so it's really a unique kind of event that brings everybody together at the same time.
So instead of National Homebrew Day, it should be International Homebrew Day.
It should be at this point, yes.
What are some things that you're encouraging people to do during the Big Brew?
Well, we usually start things off with a toast that we hold at noon Central Time, and everybody kind of gets together at that time and offers a toast to homebrewing. And I know a lot of sites like to offer a toast to Jimmy Carter, who made homebrewing possible again, legal again in the United States. But that's how we start things off, and then it's time to fire up the kettles and brew some beer.
I guess we could toast the legislators who drafted the legislation, along with President Carter, although he does deserve credit for signing the legislation.
Right.
And so, is there a particular reason for the date around National Homebrew Day? Was that around the time that the legislation was signed?
Well, National Homebrew Day came about in 1988. It was recognized by the United States Congress, and basically they selected the date. I believe it was May 8th. But we celebrate National Homebrew Day on the first Saturday of May. So.
There are, let's see, there's a, and I mentioned this on the couple previous episodes, but there is a special offer for people who join the American Homebrewers Association up until May. I'll check that out. I'll put that at the end. But during the month of May, if you join the AHA, you get a free book as well, and there's a selection, I think, of 3 books that they can choose
from.
Right,
and the books happen to coincide with the styles of beer that we have for the recipes this year. So there's a pale ale book, which also covers IPA, and so we've got an IPA recipe. The Bock book, which also covers Doppelbock, and we've got a Doppelbock recipe. And then the Brew Like a Monk book, which covers the Belgian strong ales, and so we've got a Belgian strong ale recipe.
Cool. Well, I know that I've read one of those books, Brew Like a Monk, otherwise known as Blam, to some of the to some of the listeners, and it helped me to get into Belgians, which I was very grateful to Stan for helping me to do that.
Right. Yeah, Stan Hieronymus is an excellent writer, and that's a great book.
It's fun to read as well as being useful as well. So let's talk about the recipes. Let's start out with what's first on the list: Griffin Spit IPA.
Yeah, and let me just mention that all these recipes are the recipes for the commemorative beers for this year's National Homebrewers Conference. And so these are all from people who are on the local committee, or in the case of Tom Hale, was on the local committee the last time we had the conference in Denver, and he brewed the commemorative beer way back in 1994 for that conference. He's now the head brewer at Sandlot. But getting back to the Griffin Spit, the name is in commemoration to Tony McCrimmon's, the brewer's dog, who helped him with the recipe by munching on some of his specialty grains before he had a chance to brew. So it kind of altered the recipe a little bit, and I gather the results were so good that he continues to brew it.
And I think that it says a quart of the previous batch is always added to the next batch as homage to the recipe collaboration with Griffin. so
Griffin lives on through this beer.
There's a little bit of spit in every batch. So are these beers going to be brewed up and bottled and distributed at the conference?
Right, yes. All the beers have actually been brewed already, but we'll have them available in bottles, and we'll certainly have some on draft as well, and highly encourage anybody who's coming to the conference who brews these beers for Big Brew to bring some along and give us a chance to compare.
Oh, cool. That's a good idea. When I first read the name, I thought, griffins are mythical creatures, aren't they? And I thought that it was like fiery hot or something. But then I read the story, and actually, one of my dogs stuck her nose in the bucket of grain this past weekend. So, or this past brew session. So I may have to work her name into that as well.
Sure.
Let's talk about Griffin Spit IPA specifically. It looks like Summit hops are pretty much not only center stage, but that they're the only hops on the stage.
Right, and it's a newer variety of hop. It's a high alpha hop, 19% alpha acid. They're not necessarily all that widely available, and so like we always tell people with the recipes, like we like to come out with recipes that are going to challenge people and get people to do new things. But if you can't happen to get Summit hops at your local homebrew supply shop, don't worry about it. Just ask your supply shop owner for a recommendation for a substitution. Pretty much any high alpha hop is gonna work as a good substitution for the Summit. So something like Columbus or Centennial or one of the other American high alpha hops will be a perfectly acceptable substitute.
And this has got an original gravity of around 1073 with anticipated IBU of 190.3.
Right, and the other interesting thing about this is that it has such a high IBUs, but all of the hop additions come in the last 20 minutes of the boil. It's kind of a newer technique that's come out of some of the double IPAs that are being brewed commercially in San Diego, and of course from homebrewers who are pushing the envelope with some of these high alpha hops. It allows you to add more hops to the end of the boil, so you get more of that hop flavor and aroma character without being completely over the top on IBUs. And, of course, with IBUs like 190, I really don't think that you can maybe get that from a calculation, but I don't think you'll ever get that in an actual brew. You can only absorb so much alpha acid into a brew. As the concentration gets higher, it's harder to absorb more. But my understanding is that humans can only sense bitterness up to around 80 to 100 IBUs. So it actually doesn't really matter once you get up to those numbers.
It's like my friend who was an audiophile back in high school, and he would cite all these numbers on how precisely his system was reproducing the sound, and I would say, now, human hearing can't really tell the difference between like your stereo and one that's $500 less, right? And he would say, well, yeah, but I know it's there. The numbers say that it's there.
Right. Yeah. It's like homebrewing's fun, so don't. I never get too wrapped up about numbers. So
that's right.
Everybody's brew system is different, so they're never going to be that consistent. And, the point of Big Brew is really to get people together and get them brewing and getting their friends brewing and having a good time. So don't need to get too caught up in hitting exact IBUs or final gravities or those kinds of things.
It is fun conversation after you've had a couple of homebrews, though, to talk about the theories of all this stuff. Even though it's kind of like talking about baseball strategies or something. But I would encourage people to do the late hopping strategy, and I've done that with some beers lately with hops like Amarillo and Simcoe, and with an extract batch. If you only hop during the last 15 minutes of the boil, you only have to boil for 15 minutes because that's all you need to sanitize or sterilize the extract. So that cuts 45 minutes off of your brew day, which is always a good thing.
Yes. And so like with the Griffin spit, the all grain recipe calls for a 90-minute boil, but the extract version we just have it at a 35-minute boil. There's really not any need for doing such a long boil.
Well, the second recipe is a Belgian strong ale called Striking Gold.
Right, and the name kind of ties into Colorado's gold mining heritage. So it's a Belgian golden ale, so the name kind of makes sense. This is from Bob Kaufman, who's one of the co-chairs of the local committee putting on the National Homebrewers Conference in Denver. This is it's an interesting recipe and calls for different kinds of sugars. Bob recommends that people try experimenting with different sugars and getting different results. So open to a lot of experimentation, lots of different yeasts that could be used. So it's a fun one.
And that kind of fits in with the Belgian spirit, doesn't it? Kind of not establishing too tight of guidelines, but just kind of giving you a direction to move in and letting you have some freedom yourself.
Sure.
And a lot of people may not have access to like jaggery sugar or something like that, so he suggested some alternatives in there. So that's good.
Right. It's straight up corn sugar or Belgian candy sugar, brown sugar, syrups, all kinds of things that you can add.
And this has an anticipated original gravity of 1077 with IBUs of 31. Of course, it's fairly low for this style. But that sounds delicious as well. And then we have a Doppelbock as the third recipe.
Right, yes. And this is, like I was saying, this is from Tom Hale, who brewed the commemorative beer for the last National Homebrewers Conference that was in Denver back in '94. So he's now the head brewer at the Sandlot Brewing Company, which is the brew pub that's at Coors Field in Denver.
Yeah, they put out some pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, they seem to rack up several medals every year at Great American Beer Festival. So I think Tom knows what he's doing.
And for those who like to slam Coors all the time, well, there's at least one reason why you should give Coors some slack, in that they have that facility open.
Yeah, and apparently they give Tom some pretty good leeway in coming up with some creative beers. And every time I go in there, they have something interesting on tap.
And they always win medals at the GABF. So those are some really good recipes to try out, not only for Big Brew, but whenever you brew the next time, or they're good at least reference points to start off on formulating your own recipe, which is always helpful. So the Big Brew coming up this weekend, and then we should. Do you know how many people have registered as sites for the Big Brew this year?
We have right around 170 so far, and that number will certainly go up over the next few days. We usually have people registering their sites after the fact, so
so it's not too late.
People take some time in getting their registration in and remitting their results, but certainly the sooner people can get their results back to us, the sooner we can start promoting it. So if everybody would go to beertown.org and make sure they've registered their site and let us know what their results are after May 5th, that would be most appreciated. It's really a great event that we can use to promote to the media that will help us get more people involved in homebrewing.
But you're the AHA and not the IRS, so the deadlines.
Yeah, we're a little more flexible.
Well, let's talk about the National Homebrew Competition coming up. The deadline has already passed on that, right?
Right. So yeah, actually, most of the judging has been completed at this point, and so still waiting on just getting the final results in, and we'll have those posted very shortly. If some of those might already be posted, and the initial indications are that we have a record year again for the second year in a row, with over 4,500 entries, probably getting up to around 4,700. So hopefully we'll have that final number shortly. So looking forward to promoting that, and very excited to see we've got another record year for the National Homebrew Competition.
And as Charlie Papazian said on our podcast, it's the biggest homebrew contest in the galaxy. So,
as far as we know, yes. I didn't think scientists just found another planet that could possibly hold life. So there's potential for beer in the universe outside of the Earth. But it's actually the world's largest beer competition. As far as I know, there is no other beer competition that gets more entries than the National Homebrew Competition.
So it's not just homebrew; it's beer in general.
Right. Uh-huh.
And do you have any indication on the breakdown of the categories? What categories are popular? Do you know anything along those lines yet?
Yeah, the popular categories are American Pale Ales, Stouts, English Pale Ales, Belgian Strong Ales, and Belgian Ales tend to be some of the biggest categories. So those would be the really big ones.
Are beers tending to get bigger as far as original gravity? Is the popularity of beers trending toward bigger beers in general?
I think there has been that trend, but I think we're also seeing a trend of doing more session beers as well. We just had a club-only competition for Scottish ales, which are low-gravity beers, and we had over 50 entries, which is pretty impressive for that style. So I think people are also, while there is that trend towards brewing these huge beers, big hoppy beers, there's also kind of a counter trend as well of brewing more session beers, brewing beers that you can have a couple and be able to function.
Well, I'm all for that because I enjoy having more than one beer at a sitting, and I also enjoy not having to stay at home and do that. So
sure.
But the judging upwards of or close to 5,000 entries has got to be quite a task.
It's an enormous task, and we're fortunate in that we have so many volunteers to help us out. We've got 10 different regional sites, including one in Canada and a separate cider site. And local volunteers that help organize those regional sites and put on the judging. We got hundreds of judges that help judge all the entries, and stewards who help with the judging as well. It's a massive undertaking. It's well organized by our National Homebrew Competition Director, Janice Gross. She helps make sure everything gets done, and gets done in a way that is fair to the entrants. So.
Which region is traditionally the most active?
It varies every year.
Hmm.
So I think this year the biggest region was the South region.
Woohoo!
Last year the East region had the most entries, but I do believe that this year the South region, which was judged down in Florida, Tallahassee.
The winners of the competition will be, the final round is happening at the National Homebrewers Conference in Denver, coming up on June 21st through 23rd. And you guys, it's got to be, is it a good thing, or is it stressful to have it, is it more stressful to have the competition or the conference close to home for you guys?
Oh, it's a great thing for us. We have a really amazing group of homebrew clubs right here in the Front Range of Colorado. The people who have a lot of experience with volunteering for beer events like the Great American Beer Festival that we have every year here in Denver. So it's been really great. They definitely know what they're doing and have a really amazing event planned. The lineup of speakers is one of the best we've ever had. We've got Peter Bouckaert, who is the brewmaster for New Belgium Brewing Company, as our keynote speaker. We've got Denver Mayor John Hickenlooper, who's going to be there for the welcoming toast on Thursday afternoon. It's really great to have the mayor there. The mayor has strong ties in the brewing community. He started the first brew pub in Colorado, the Wind Coop.
Oh wow!
Which is still alive and going, a great place. So really, actually, very excited to have the conference back in Denver.
And the location itself is great because of all the breweries around. So those who are going to the conference, you might want to come 2 or 3 days early.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to do in Colorado beyond just beer, but the beer here is pretty amazing. We've got over 100 breweries in the state of Colorado, and in Denver alone, there are several to visit. There's Breckenridge, Great Divide, Flying Dog, Wind Coop, Rock Bottom, and of course there's the Falling Rock Tap House, which is one of the highlights of the Denver beer scene, just down the street from the ballpark. Amazing selection of beers there, and Chris Black, the owner, is a great supporter of homebrewers. So we actually have that as part of one of the pre-conference tours. There's a walking tour of the Denver breweries, and a lunch is being served at the Falling Rock as part of that.
And what's going on during the conference itself?
Well, every day we'll have a lineup of speakers giving talks on various homebrew and beer-related subjects. And on Thursday we'll have the National Homebrew Competition judging, and then Thursday evening we have what we call Pro Brewers Night. We've titled it Mining for Beers to go along with the gold mining theme here in Colorado. And we'll have several of the local breweries serving their best. And this is really a unique kind of beer festival, the Pro Brewers Night, because all the attendees are homebrewers. And we generally have the brewers, the professional brewers themselves are behind their booth serving their beers, so it's an opportunity to sample some of their best beers and ask them questions about how they brewed them. And it's really just a great event, bringing together both the professional and amateur brewing communities.
Kind of a tough crowd, or potentially a tough crowd to play to people who know about beer, to serve people who know about beer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a tough crowd. I mean, they certainly know what they're talking about, but they also tend to be very excited about the chance to talk to the brewers there, and so it's really a chance for them to show off to people who really know what good craft beer is all about.
And I would imagine the cream of the crop would be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a state like Colorado, we actually are going to have to be fairly selective because we have so many great breweries. So there are going to be some really excellent beers being served. So there's definitely a lot of buzz amongst the craft brewers here on the Front Range for the event. So lots of excitement.
And then probably was one of the highlights of the Orlando conference for Steve and me was Club Night, where the homebrewers themselves get to show off.
Right. Club Night is usually the most popular event of the whole conference. This is where it's kind of like Pro Brewers Night, except for all the booths are set up by clubs, and we've already gotten over 26 clubs from across the country. Clubs coming from California, from Washington, from Georgia, from New Hampshire, so all over the country are descending on Denver for this event, and they'll be serving up their finest. Clubs get very creative in decorating their booths, and usually bring some costumes, and lots of clubs will bring in some food to serve from their local area, kind of highlighting what they're all about. So really an amazing, fun event. So definitely one not to miss. And
Steve and I discovered some new styles of beers that we had not encountered before, and one of those was the chili beers last year. So we're excited to see what's up for this year.
Oh yeah, you get the full gamut, and with the number of clubs, I think this was probably going to be a record year in terms of the number of clubs that we'll have at Club Night. You'll pretty much get anything that anybody's brewing out there. So it's a lot of fun, and you can get some experimentation, get some ideas to take home, and try out yourself. So.
Yeah, and you can again talk to the brewers right there to see the techniques that they use to brew these beers, and get some fodder for your experimentation later on. And then the sessions, the way the sessions are running, are we going to have two sessions running simultaneously again this year?
We'll have two sessions running simultaneously on Friday and Saturday. We have one session on Thursday during the judging, and those sessions will be repeated later so that the judges won't miss out on anything.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that was one of the it was good that Steve and I both went to Orlando, because when there were two sessions running simultaneously, we could split up and then share notes afterwards, which is a good thing. There's just a ton of information there at these things.
And unfortunately, there's no way for one individual to see them all, and they're all great. So it's definitely a good idea to have a friend go into the other one so that you can compare those notes. And, it's a really incredible lineup of speakers this year. So very, very excited about it.
And if people want to learn more, they can go to beertown.org.
Right, and also want to mention that the early registration period where you can get a discounted rate on registration is coming up pretty quick. May 15th is the last day to get those early registrations in, so you want to do that fast. Also seeing hotel rooms are booking up quickly too, so people will want to get on that and make sure that they get the discounted rate for the Homebrewers Conference.
Very good. Well, Gary, I appreciate your time, and I'm excited. I'm getting, June's just around the corner.
It is coming up very quickly.
Well, good luck with the Big Brew and the contest, the competition, and the conference, and we will see you in Denver.
Thanks, James.
Well, thanks again to Gary Glass for taking time out to talk to us. You can find out more about everything we talked about at beertown.org, and the free book deal when you join the AHA is good until May 11th. So you got some time to take advantage of that. And I hope to see a lot of you folks in Denver for the conference in June. By the way, Steve and Andy will be there, too, from Arkansas. And then, Brian Warren lives there in the Denver area, so hopefully we will see him as well. Next week, as promised, Dan Carey from New Glarus Brewing Company on Brewing with Oak. Dan talks about using both oak chips and going whole hog and using oak barrels. It's a good one. Well worth the wait, Mark. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com. Or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And while you're on our site, you can check out our online shop where you can find our new shirt, Go Forth and Go Forth and Flocculate. And our DVDs. Where was I? Oh, my. And a combo deal to save you even more on the DVDs. And our first one, Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, we walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in Basic Brewing, Stepping into All Grain, we walk you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort. We do batch sparging, fly sparging, infusion mashing, and step mashing, the whole ball of wax. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your local area, you can order it from us online. And I will ship it to you. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our little Amazon.com link there. We appreciate the support. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are GRE Exam Vocabulary Flashcards. Good luck on that, the GRA. And Felco Original Hand Pruner, number F2. Hopefully it doesn't actually prune your hands. But there you go. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we'll get a little teeny hunk of that. We appreciate your support. That's all until next week, everybody. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson, our man in Austin, who did our logo as well. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.